Hey guys, thanks for supporting the generic tech support channel. This is Tech Guy 1. Just wanted to thank you guys all for making this channel great. Like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. Let's get this video rolling. Hey guys, so I figured today we would do a little retro video. And looking at the screen, we're seeing that we're installing a modern version of Microsoft Windows. This is specifically Windows 10 LTSC. Now, I'm not really sure which version of LTSC this is because the system that we're installing comes with a bit of a surprise at the end. I don't really want to give too much information on this, but it's something that I know a lot of people on the internet have been talking about. And we've done a previous video on how to make your Windows 10 look like this operating system. However, this Windows 10 operating system is kind of a hybrid, a clone, or a build off of an original, very popular version of Windows. So let's get this installation completed, and then hopefully at the end you guys have a good surprise. So much like all the videos that we do with custom homebrew based systems, we'll just go through the installation process and see if there's anything different between this system and your traditional, typical out-of-the-box Windows 10 configuration. So far it's pretty much the same as it always is, and we'll continue on until we get to the point where there's a slight change. Okay, so our system's booting now for the first time since we did the installation, and we should be logging in here shortly to see what this operating system actually brings. Oh, there we go, guys. Welcome to Microsoft Windows 10, the eXPerience Feature Edition. So this particular system is modified extensively visually to look like Windows XP, but it still provides you the modern Windows 10 backend. Let's take a look at this operating system. Okay, so the first thing I did with this operating system, as we do with everything, is to install our VM tools so that way we get a full screen. And man, it is glorious. This operating system looks just like your Windows XP edition of Microsoft. Matter of fact, if you didn't see the system boot, I don't know that you would be able to tell the difference between what this is and what XP was. I'm curious if the functions, if the menu system, the right click, all that stuff looks the same. We still have right click and access into the actual system. Unfortunately, we don't have all of the visualization. So in other words, something's still borked or broken in the actual operating system from a display perspective. But honestly, a lot of this stuff I could just overlook. It's interesting how it tells us it's Microsoft Windows Professional 64-bit edition, and it's definitely not. This is definitely Windows 10. Man, this is crazy. We can see that the menu system's still a little weird, a little funky with how it's laid out at the top here versus our Windows XP display, how it would look. We still have app data, which is something that will give this operating system away. So if we go into our C drive here, we don't have, well, is it visually disabled? Let's see if we go into folder options, if we show hidden files and folders, unhide the extensions for known file types. Yeah, so we have a users directory, but we don't have documents and settings. So that kind of gives it away that it's not Windows XP. We also have program data, and we have a 64-bit and x86 folder. Now, I don't know if that exists inside of the 64-bit Windows XP. I haven't spent an enormous amount of time in the 64-bit version of Windows XP. We have a backup and restore for Windows 7. We have Windows Defender Firewall, so that tells us right off the bat. I wonder if these things that we can't see still work. Yeah, they do. So we still have inbound rules and configuration. So yeah, this is Windows 10. This is definitely Windows 10. It's so cool, the fact that it looks just like your Windows XP operating system. And I mean, it functionally is, it's pretty much there. Now, I don't believe that the gentleman who actually designed or developed the system is still doing this stuff. His name was Travis. I just know that from the archive site, which is where I found the actual ISO file. The website that used to be directed or used to exist doesn't appear to exist any longer. And as a result, I can't get the latest version. Apparently there is a 22H2 build. This is the LTSC version, which is, you know, honestly, the LTSC version is pretty much a solid operating system at this point. So I don't really see a point in having to search down and try to find the 22H2 version. If Travis happens to catch wind of this video and wants to throw a link somewhere, I would be happy to install it and test it out. But this is pretty dope. I really, it's pretty awesome. I'm actually shocked as to how well it's done visually, even with the bugs, the issues that don't seem to work correctly in the actual operating system. The layout and some of these menu systems don't function correctly, but you know, I'd imagine that that's probably a relatively simple fix, and who knows, maybe in the 22H2 version it's probably already resolved. But I know that there's been a lot of complaints about people on those archive sites indicating that this operating system is missing functionality and things don't work and things are broken, but I think that this is amazing. The amount of development work that would be required into your Windows 10 system to actually get all of the visual graphics to look just like your Windows XP world. Including like Internet Explorer, which is really Mozilla Firefox, but getting the icons to work and the menu system to look like it, it's really amazing. It really is. So what we got to do here on this system anyway is we should set a static IP address so we could scan it with our Nessus scanner. Problem is once we go into these menu systems, you know, we can't see what we need to see on the side here to actually get into the location to change it. Now I just know, because I know that it's the second link up is where you're going to go for your network places, but I don't understand, at least from the development perspective with this, why you wouldn't have just grabbed this thing and just created the shortcut and changed the shortcut to look like the actual image versus going through the menu system. Because ultimately in Windows XP, if you right-clicked on this, or rather open the file location, whatever it is, if you actually got into the actual location there, that's what you would have gotten with XP versus the actual layout. But again, that's me just picking, you know, I mean, realistically, the fact that this exists the way it looks is just incredible to me. Somebody put a lot of time into this to try to get this to look like Windows XP on a Windows 10 system, and I think they really did. They really knocked it out of the park as far as I'm concerned, because this is, I'm just genuinely amazed as to how closely it resembles it and works. Now, a lot of these homebrew operating systems, they don't feel polished. And while I will say the menu system's a little funky, and again, that's something that probably is just a graphical change as far as like colors and whatnot to make your links, your symbolic links actually work. Which again, maybe it's done on purpose because they didn't exist in the original XP version, and you know, it just wants to hide them. I have no idea. But with that said, you know, aside from those little queue issues, this is pretty well polished. It's actually quick. It's not slow at all. So much like our other small versions of Windows, we don't have Defender installed. There is no Defender application on here. Looks like we have a modified version of OpenShell on this system to actually run the start menu. So I'm guessing we probably don't have a right click. We do have a right click. The right click on start actually works. That's pretty amazing. We have the 7 taskbar tweaker executable running on this system. We have a bunch of services and configuration running on this system. And obviously, because, you know, look how it looks. That's to be expected. But with that said, I'm curious from a security standpoint what we look like. Do we look the same as we would on a Windows 10 system, or with all these additional services and stuff, do we have any questionable things installed? And also, we should put an antivirus on the system and run a scan, because I'm really curious if the antivirus comes back with anything, even if it's a false positive, just because, again, we have tweaked operating system here. So let's run some scans on this thing. Let's take a look at the antivirus scan first, and then we'll run a Nessus scan on it to see what we see. And we could go in through all the configuration, the add remove programs, but we're going to see a bunch of configuration in here because, again, I mean, just look at it in all its glory. Just take it in. I know you guys probably can't hear it in the background while I'm going through the actual menu system as far as clicking on things, but all of the click noises that you would have originally heard in your Windows XP machine exist in here. So the little ticks when you click on things, the startup sound is there, the shutdown sound is there. The operating system contains all of the original sound packs as well for the Windows XP operating system, and the eXPerience, as this thing is called. So let's continue to get our super anti-spyware here installed. Now, one of the big complaints that I've seen on the site for this actual operating system is a lot of people complain that they can't install software, or software doesn't work correctly on the actual operating system, and I'm guessing it's because of the actual theme pack that's installed. As far as how certain software looks, one of the major complaints is that Malwarebytes doesn't install. Somebody else complained and said that they couldn't get like the later versions of Firefox to install. They couldn't install Chrome, things of that nature. So probably in a second video on this, we will go through the additional installation and setting this up as a daily driver type of desktop and see if it's true that from a functional standpoint, maybe the operating system doesn't work right. But so far, we were able to at least install our antivirus on this system, so we could scan for viruses on this box. Let me go through these settings real quick, go through it, set it up the way we want it set up, so that way we can run the scan. And then we will take a look to see what the scan results come back with. So actually, rather surprisingly, we don't see anything that comes back as far as being harmful on the machine. Now, a lot of people may say, well, you know, it's Windows 10 and you're not going to, you know, it's just an out-of-the-box build. But the truth is because of all the functions and feature packs that are on this thing, I just assumed that we were going to see some kind of false positive. Even if it wasn't an actual infection, at least a false positive in the actual operating system. So I figure since this looks so much like Windows XP, maybe what we should do is we should just go through the menu system here and actually see if it functions like XP. And as you can see, I can slide things up and down through here. We have MSN installed, which is interesting, in Outlook Express. Wow. I think that actually might be the original Outlook Express. What else do we have in here? Windows Messenger. That really is Windows Messenger. So some of the actual applications that are on here are still the original Windows XP applications running on Windows 10, which just goes to prove that you could still run all of this stuff on your Windows 10 system. I'm pretty amazed. I mean, so do we have original? So that's Firefox. And that's Firefox. So we have Internet Explorer 64 and Internet Explorer, but they're the same. I think the path is the same too. Program files, Mozilla Firefox. Program files, Mozilla Firefox. So they're the same application. We have a Windows Update location. Does that actually give us Windows Update? really gives us the Windows Update site from the original Windows XP system. We have the catalog. Well, that's kind of cool. Does it actually go to the catalog? No, I don't think that goes to the catalog. So that's pretty neat. There's quite a bit of stuff in here. That's really like a blast from the past. Do we have... I don't think the Hyper Terminal exists in the later version. It exists in here. Yeah, I don't care. Close it out. Oh, I don't care. Don't mind me. That's just VMware being VMware. So yeah, that looks all looks pretty standard. So that's pretty cool. This is pretty neat. Let's Now the question is can I run this as admin? I sure can. And look at that. They actually did the right thing with UAC. So UAC is configured on the system to still allow the administrative console to run in the System32 space without the escalation on the safe desktop. So basically what the dev did on this particular system is the correct way. If you're going to disable UAC, that's the correct way to do it. And I give him credit because that's not an easy thing to do. That's registry modification time. And he did the right thing. That's the right way to do it. That's something that we don't see on the X-Lite systems, and that's something we sure as heck don't see on the Ghost systems. The Integral system didn't have that. I mean, none of the other ones had that. This one does, which, you know, I'm impressed with that. That shows that the person actually put dedication and time into this operating system, if you can't tell already, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable the Windows firewall on the system, and we're going to jump over to the Nessus scanner, and we're going to scan this thing and see what it looks like. Figured I would save you guys the sound in the background on the keyboard, but I figured I would show the actual execution of the task, because if this is really Windows XP 64-bit edition, this command's not going to work. It's not going to exist. But as you can see, we get the original firewall notification here for Windows 10. So this is missing I guess a wrapper or whatever in the actual operating system. Again, not 100%, but that's okay because for the most part, it really does pass the test of looking and functioning like Windows XP. So I am genuinely impressed. I'm also impressed with the fact that when we run our UAC controls, we get the right UAC location, which tells me that the person knew what the heck they were doing when they did the configuration. So at least from a security standpoint, they didn't leave functions of the operating system out of the operating system. So let's jump over to our Nessus scanner now and take a look to see how this thing comes back. Okay, so while the system's actually scanning, I figured I would actually show this. So a couple things that I discovered on the process of setting this up with a static IP address is, number one, the computer manager doesn't actually work. Now, we could go to our command prompt here, and we could do computer management, and we can get to the computer manager, and that does work that way, but we can't actually get through it through the my computer location and clicking on manage. So that's something that's broken in the actual, I guess the GUI, the configuration. The other thing is that the network adapter is not connected to the network adapter. So if we set a static IP address in here, which I did, it didn't do anything. What I ended up having to do is down here in the taskbar, we have a PE network manager installed on this system, which has that 242.219. That's our scan IP. So I had to set it through this Ethernet configuration manager because the configuration manager itself inside of the built-in operating system is no longer connected, which is really bizarre. I'm not really sure what's going on there, but that's something that's a little strange, a little bizarre, a little outlandish. I don't know if it was required in order for this to work, but I'm going to guess that it wasn't because everything else really functions as it did out of the box. So I'm guessing that whatever this actual application is likely unnecessary and also a little disheartening because in reality, if it's not necessary, everything else on this operating system seems so clean. I don't understand why you would actually do that. So let's take a look to see what's actually installed on this thing. Again, I figured that there'd be quite a bit because we do have customization in here, but I was really hoping that we wouldn't have anything really out there or bizarre. So this application here, which is Perigee Copy, that's actually a legit application. What that was originally for Windows XP, which would allow you to copy files from one system to another, from one folder to another. And the XP world used to, if a file failed, it would actually fail out that file. It wouldn't continue the actual copy. So in Windows 10, that doesn't happen. But in this particular system, because of whatever reason, it's installed because it would allow the file to continue to copy after it actually failed. But again, I'm not sure why it would exist on this since this is really technically Windows 10 with a wrapper. I guess to give you that nostalgic feel, maybe. I'm not 100% sure. But in all honesty, that's probably not necessary in order for this to still function. As far as this is concerned, these are actually the sound controllers for the older versions of Windows 10. So like the 15.11 version, the release versions of Windows 10. This was later replaced by a different application, but at the time, this is legit and was actually part of the Windows 10 operating system. For those curious, it's the Shell eXPerience host is what replaces these two applications in the later versions of Windows 10. But again, they are legit. They just look suspect because most people aren't used to seeing the old 15.11 version of build of Windows 10 at this point, since 22H2 is basically the most stable version of Windows 10 that has been released, with the exception of the later versions of the LTSC, which is based on the 2019 server, which is also very stable. And then, of course, we have Classic Shell or OpenShell installed on this thing. Just keep in mind that this particular version of OpenShell installed is not the one that's infected with the log4j crap. That's a previous version, and I'm guessing it was modified because, again, my start right-click menu works. So that's something that, at least from a technical standpoint, if you get into a system and you have Classic Shell installed or OpenShell and you click on this thing and you right-click and you get the option to exit the OpenShell configuration, at that point I would just uninstall it, because in the later versions of Windows, the right-click menu is really required from a systems engineer or systems technical standpoint, technician standpoint, to actually function. So if you have an IT staff in your office or in your building and you right-click on your start menu and all you get is the option to exit the Classic Shell, at that point I would question why you're paying this IT company, Because if they don't know how to function in the actual Windows operating system, I feel like you're getting ripped off. If they have it installed on the server, at that point, change the password and change the IT company. Because again, these companies, these people that are managing and maintaining your internal infrastructure, if you're a business owner, a small business owner, or you work in an office that uses managed services, if there's Classic Shell installed and they don't know how to function in the start menu for the modern operating system, they don't know about the right click in the menu. These are not people you want in your server because they don't know what they're doing. Basically, anybody that's experienced in the technical world, if you see that stuff immediately, the only thing that comes to mind for all of us is it's amateur hour and what am I looking for now that's broken in this system? Because that tells us straight away that whoever was in there maintaining the system has no idea what they were actually doing. All right, so at any rate, everything else looks pretty much standard in here, right? I mean, as far as standard goes, right? So like I'm trying to do standard based off of a combination or a clone of a Windows XP system, right? So I mean, like in a Windows XP system, seeing things like the MSN, and seeing things like our Outlook Express 6. These are things that I would see common in a Windows XP system. So to me, seeing this in here, even though it's bizarre, because again, we're looking at a Windows 10 system, it's not bizarre because if you take into consideration that it's trying to clone a Windows XP experience, it's pretty standard to see that stuff in here. So I was curious what the actual operating system was, and I was able to get into the settings location. And to do that, you literally just start to type in your start menu, and it'll automatically open up the system's location. So in doing that, I mean, again, credit where credit's due, right? So I mean, this is Windows 10, but we're seeing Windows XP Professional x64 Edition 1809. So this is LTSC 1809. Now, we don't have a baseline for LTSC 1809 to compare this to, and maybe we should run a baseline at some point in our videos here just to take a look to see what LTSC looks like from a Windows 10 perspective in our vanilla world. But what we do have is we do have the outcome now of our Nessus scan. Now, as to whether or not this is a good number or not is not entirely certain. We have 38 infos, we have one medium, and we have one high. The one high is a result of us not having a password to log into the system. The system currently is configured to do pass-through authentication on logon, and as a result, we're going to get a high notification because anonymous authentication is enabled without having any passwords or credentials set up. Then we have the one for the SMB configuration because SMB version 3 is actually enabled on this system. SMB 1, I believe, is disabled. Hopefully, I don't know because, again, Windows XP experience. But that said, if we go through our configuration of the system and we lock this system down with our settings changes, we could easily get this system back to a decent number. With that said, I don't know if the 38 infos is normal or not on an LTSC system. It's quite possibly that it is normal, especially since we're talking 1809, and we're also talking about a system, at least in this particular scenario, that it looks like it hasn't been updated since January of 2023. So with that said, these may be things that would go away with updates. If we compare this to a 22H2 version of Windows 10 with all the updates, then we should see 23 infos and one medium with the SMB3 turned on, which is what would be normal or acceptable or vanilla baseline to use. But since we don't have a baseline for LTSC at this point, I don't have anything to compare it to. With that said, is 38 infos good? If we compare it to 22H2 out of the box, not so much. I don't see anything that's listed in our configuration in here that would indicate that we have a problem with the operating system as far as cause for alarm, remote access, things of that nature, or anything that would indicate that there's some kind of malware, spyware, or something sitting there listening. I don't see that. So maybe that's something we should check over here. So we're just going to go start, run, CMD. And we'll run a netstack command here, and we'll look specifically for the term listening. So we're going to see all our listening ports in here, and our configuration is pretty standard. I mean, we have our advertising ID listening. We have our dynamic port allocation here for the higher port numbers that was introduced in Windows 10. We have our CIFS, we have our SMB port. We're listening on what we're supposed to be listening on. This is out-of-the-box Windows configuration for Windows 10, and this is totally normal. So I don't see anything in here that stands out from a TCP listening port configuration. Now, we could jump into the UDP port configuration, but ultimately I think that's something that we'll do in our next video. So we'll use PowerShell commands, and we'll start pull back data and details about the rest of this operating system to see what else is installed on here. And let me know in the comments down below if you guys have ever worked with this actual network PE network manager tool. I'm curious if you guys have had any experience with that. Generally speaking, all that stuff usually does is it gives like a nice, like friendly visual for configuration and network adapter and things of that nature. And I've seen those in Windows XP and operating systems of the past, but in Windows 10, I don't know that it's necessary, and I'm just curious from a functional standpoint if maybe we could just strip it out of this operating system to run the built-in stuff anyway. But I think our next video on this actual operating system is to see if we could actually secure the operating system to fix the 38 infos, the one high, the one medium. And then maybe after that, we should go into, does it function as a day-to-day? Like, can we run software on it? Do all versions of software, do they just install, or do we have problems with them? In addition, we should take a look to see if Windows Updates still work, because again, we're running 1809 LTSC, so at least the build date for the actual ISO file says that it's from January of 2023, so we're over a year at this point, and with that, there's been quite a bit of security updates that should be applied to this actual system if we're going to run it as a day-to-day driver. And this is something that I would be interested in running as a day-to-day driver, because I mean, look at it, it's just so cool. It really is. If you like XP, then this is something that you'll find just as cool. I'll put the link in the description. You can check out what I have. If anybody has the link for the R2 version or the 22H2 version, send me an email and put in the title windowsXperience 10, and I'll find it in the subject line, so that way I could grab it and we could do the installation of the 22H2 version. If anybody knows where to find Travis at this point and has any communication with him from this operating system, give him a high five or something, man, because this took a lot. You could tell that this took a lot. And cheers to him for doing it. All right, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this one. Thanks for sticking around.